Heidi ho, everyone. Welcome to another beautiful day in the Matrix with the scheduled weather right on time. Anyway, today is going to be story time. I haven't done too many videos reading to you guys, maybe only a handful over the past year or so. And I only do it if I feel like it's even worthy, if it's so bizarre and interesting to me, and I feel like it's worthy to share, then I do. So I will. I'm not going to read the entire chapter. I'm going to read a portion of it because it's just absurdly long. But I think you're going to find this interesting because it is. Before I get into that, I've been meditating on the Illuminati card games again. It's been a long time since I made a video on that actually, and I think I'm going to start getting into that again. And as many of you know, there's absolutely not a chance in hell that those cards are not predictive programming. They've been proven that the things on those cards, you cannot mistake the events that have come true from those cards. Now, the one card in particular that bothers me the most is the tape runs out, and how that card, you could look it up, just put in tape runs out Illuminati card, how that card might have some sort of connection with the Mandela effect and the shifting realities we're experiencing here. So, having said that, it's kind of a little quirky, strange things been happening at work yesterday. It was really odd. How else do I put this? It felt like I was being watched all night. Now, call me crazy or whatever, okay? You guys know full well the feeling of being watched. You know when there's something gazing upon you, something paying attention to you. It's a very powerful, intuitive sense. And I was feeling it all night. And I was like, what in the world is going on? And yet to have an answer to that one. I hope it doesn't happen again tonight, though, because it was creepy. There's a lot of animals there, though. Could have been an owl. All right, this is called Strange Things in Warminster, which is in the UK. And I never heard of this anomaly. I've never heard of these incidences before, which to me is extraordinary because I've studied anomalies and mysteries for years, and I thought I pretty much knew most of them by now, but never heard of this. Mr. Arthur Shuttlewood, a reporter for the Wiltshire Times, became a self appointed chronicler for the bizarre series of events that took over a small rural community just 20 minutes' drive from Stonehenge in Wiltshire, England. The events took place in the mid 60s in the small garrison town of Warminster and the surrounding Cradle Hill and Clay Hill, all located beside the chalk of Salisbury Plain. One winter night at 12:25 a.m., a local woman was driving her car when it suddenly lost power moments after she'd been seen a bright orange ball ahead of her. Her attention was then drawn to the adjacent field, where she saw a dark object rise from the grass, after which the engine of her car started to work again. Mr. Pell, a lorry driver, reported that as he was driving his vegetable lorry toward Warminster earlier in the morning of August 10th, 1965, he saw a ball of light floating approximately 50 yards in front of him, having appeared in his view from the direction of the hills beside the road. He said that it was red and it looked like a giant headlight, or rather alarmingly, as it got closer, he said it looked like a giant eyeball. It advanced on his truck where it proceeded to attach itself to his windscreen, he said, and there it began to vibrate against the glass. Mr. Pell's account was just one of the many strange reports cataloged by Arthur Shuttlewood. Earlier that same morning at around 3:45 a.m., Miss Rachel Atwell, living just a few miles away from the road on which Mr. Pell was traveling, saw what many others in the area would also describe. She said that she was woken by a loud, droning noise and got out of bed to look out of her bedroom window. She said she saw a bright light in the sky, which had a dome shaped top and it appeared to be hovering over the hills opposite her house. She said that it was there for about 25 minutes, and that it was humming and flickering, then it suddenly simply vanished. As for Mr. Pell in the delivery lorry, as he sat face to face with a single giant eyeball vibrating against his windscreen, he was most concerned about his passengers, who happened to be his wife and young daughter. They had been sleeping in the back, but had woken now, and they too were watching the giant eyeball until it rose into the air and simply vanished. All three were understandably very frightened by this awful and incomprehensible affair. Mr. Shuttlesworth himself claimed he received no less than 800 similarly strange reports from inhabitants of Warminster. There were more sinister happenings too. Animals began to be found dead with inexplicable instant rigor mortis and yet no obvious signs of trauma or injuries on their bodies could be found. Okay, you know what? Let me just read a couple more paragraphs. The local residents became increasingly disturbed, anxious, and on edge. Many were seeing very peculiar crafts flying in the air above them, all of manner of shapes and sizes. Here, proclaimed Shuttlesworth, is a window area to another place of existence. There is ample evidence to support my theory. He said, I can state with a fact that much of what happened does not include existence of astronauts from another galaxy. The pattern of events is far too complex and disturbing for this. We took photos of what we knew were typical UFO shapes, and yet when we developed our negatives, we have often ended up with prints emblazoned with rows of triangles, pyramids, weird animal heads and bodies and legs, serpents and snakes, stairways and towers. These were not aliens and UFOs, he emphasized. Many nights we heard frightening sounds which could not be identified as belonging to a man or beast. Shuttlesworth had his own odd experience one morning at 2:30 a.m. I stood at the edge of a tree near Cradle Hill. Mist swirling around me, the first sound came from a nearby barn. It was a heavy footstep. I walked toward the building and no one was in or around it, and yet the sound was repeated several times as though someone of giant size was walking, or rather clumping. I tried to catch it up, but the thing changed direction and I heard a shrill cackle that chilled my spine. For a few frightful seconds, I was rooted to the spot. Then the fear of the unknown overcame me, and I fled down the trail, twisting an ankle in my rush to escape. Giant eyeballs. That's a new one to me. That's really interesting. So, when they developed the photos, there were distortions. There are modern examples of this too. Recently, actually, of a woman in Ohio who was hunting in a patch of forest, and this was actually part of David Paulides' Missing 411. And she saw a transparent predator-like creature. And prior to her seeing that creature, there was a football game going on nearby where a bunch of high school students saw a giant UFO in the sky. So this predator-like transparent creature, like from the movie Predator, was moving around. So she took a photo of it, and it was completely distorted. And then when the photo was examined, the distortions were so complex that it would have been impossible for it to have kind of been a reflection of light or whatever by natural means of some sort. So it's not necessarily true that they weren't aliens. They might have deliberately screwed up the photo, but interesting. Warminster, huh? So before I go, I did have a dream last night, and it's not really worth sharing. I've had a couple of dreams, and I had a dream the other night I was climbing up a mountain and I was attempting to reach the peak on a highway. I wasn't climbing on a trail. And there was a torrent of water that just started flooding down, and I had to hide like in a corner. But I kept struggling and pushing and trying to get my way to the top of the mountain. Last night's dream, I was with a group of some bizarre commando unit of some kind of soldiers. They reminded me of the ones I've seen in that astral experience I had of called the Future USA. If you go back a few months, and they were all females, female like super soldiers, and they were like blowing things up and setting everything on fire. And all I remember was total war and chaos. Like they were there, and it was like everything was on fire. It's crazy. Bye.